Hey, Noah Waika here. Today I'm going to talk you through how I maintenance my KLR 650 chain. Let's get started. Before you begin, assemble the chain cleaning supplies: a grunge brush, a rag, some sort of chain lubricant, and some sort of solvent. I like to use kerosene in a spray bottle. The other thing that you'll need that you'll see later is a drop cloth. The next step will be to put the bike up onto its center stand or otherwise get the rear wheel off the floor. If you have a bike jack or something like that, that would be the time to use it. So to put mine up on the center stand, I like to grab the front of the crash bar and this passenger foot peg, and I just push it straight back. Alrighty, the rear wheel's off the ground. Let's start working on the chain. This can be kind of a messy process, so I recommend putting a drop cloth down. I just use a piece of packing foam under here and it tends to catch the drips and keep it off of my garage floor. The first step of the process is to clean your chain. Usually this involves dousing it in your solvent of choice. If my chain is really dirty, I'll spray it off with some very low pressure water just out of the hose. This serves to get a lot of the caked on dust and grime and things off of it before I actually use a harsher solvent. Today the chain looks pretty good, so I don't need to use that. So taking my spray bottle, I'll put one hand on the wheel and spin it loosely, and I'll douse the sprocket with the solvent. You don't want to use too much. Too much can cause some problems and it can get onto your rubber and start to degrade that. What I do is just sort of spritz it as it goes until the whole thing is nice and soaked. All right, from there, I keep it moving once I've stopped spraying. This serves to work the solvent in over all the roller surfaces and stuff as it interfaces with the front and rear sprocket. And that way it works itself in nicely. How I know when I have enough solvent on it is if I stop it and it doesn't drip too badly, that's enough. If it starts dripping off, I've put too much solvent on it. So we'll let it sit for a minute or two just to let it work in and start to dissolve the old chain lubricant. Okay, it's been a couple minutes. You don't want to let your solvent fully evaporate, especially if you're using something with a high flash point like kerosene or gasoline. The next step is you're going to take your grunge brush and run it on the chain. What I like to start with is I'll put this top face of the grunge brush in contact with the top face of the chain that's going to face the sprockets. You can also push in very lightly to get some of the grime off of the faceplate. So I'll do that all the way around. I also like to brace it off of this chain guard right here, so that way the grunge brush stays still and I'm not having to fight with it or scrub with it too much. I'll usually run the chain all the way through the grunge brush 3 or 4 times. Sometimes it can get stuck up in there like that. Okay, so it's starting to look pretty good. Now what we're gonna do is clean the underside. So usually to do that, I pick up and turn just a little bit. That does the same sort of thing. You can also pick up to take in your chain slack. So again, I run that through a couple of times. And then you can run it like this and take up your chain slack and get the back side of the chain. You don't want to pull it too far out of alignment. You're not really going to hurt anything if you got some side tension on it, especially if there's no drive to it. But you generally don't want to put too much side load on your chain. Okay, chain's starting to look pretty good. Usually I'll just run it through and see if there are any bad spots that I can get to. Then if there are any bad spots, you can touch it up with the end of your grunge brush normally, just to kind of brush out whatever's in between your rollers. All right, so that's looking pretty good. The next step is you're going to take your rag and just wipe off whatever fine stuff that the grunge brush didn't get. So this I'd recommend having a glove for. Kerosene on skin is not generally very good, and most of the solvents that you'll use to dissolve chain lubricant are not very good to put on your skin. So you can hear the chain starting to make a lot more noise at the front sprocket, which means that the lubricant is almost all the way gone, which is good. You want to get off as much chain lubricant as you possibly can. Okay, our next step, we're just going to wait for the solvent to fully evaporate, so when there's no longer shiny rings around here from kerosene, once that's all gone, then we can relubricate the chain and we'll be on our way. Okay, most of our solvent has evaporated, so now it's time for the lubricant. I'm using a liquid wrench chain lube. You can use whatever lube you like. There's a debate online of which lube is the best, so I'm not about to get into that. I relubricate my chain once about every 400 miles or so. It may need it sooner than that, depending on how much dirt or desert riding that you're doing, but a general street interval is about 400 miles. So make sure you shake the can nice and well. Make sure that the lubricant is all mixed up with the propellant. And once it's ready to go, take the lubricant can in one hand and rotate the wheel forward in the other. And just keep a solid stream on it. And you just sort of want to wiggle it back and forth a little bit because you want to get the whole chain as well as the rollers. So now it's been through once completely. And just like when the solvent went on, you want to rotate the whole system to make sure that it's getting coated evenly while it's nice and runny. If you just sort of spray it and let it sit, it won't fully work itself in. That's where you can get a lot of fling because you have excess lube on certain spots and no lube on other spots. You want to make sure it's nice and worked in. Now this is why you have your drop cloth. The lube will drip off just a little bit. You can alleviate that by just keeping it kind of gently moving until it starts to set. Generally what I like to do is just very carefully spin the system so that it's distributing the lubricant. And there you go. You have a clean and lubricated chain. I hope this was an easy process to follow, and until the next video, I'll see ya.